It's so weird to me that the least Guy Ritchie movie in Guy Ritchie's filmography is the one that he decides to stamp his name in the title of. Just a thought. Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. This is the second video I've recorded today, second movie I've seen today. In this instance, we're looking at Guy Ritchie's The Covenant, which just dropped this weekend in theaters. I'm a huge fan of Guy Ritchie's previous filmography. The Gentleman, Snatch, both films that I hold to a very high standard. I love the way his sort of films flow with his style. A lot of snappy dialogue, often fast-paced action that doesn't take itself completely seriously, very jokey, very snarky. But this movie is very different and very disconnected from anything he's ever made before, which is really interesting, especially when you consider the fact that this is the second film of his that's come out in just the last 2 months after Operation Fortune. Granted, that was supposed to come out, I think, like 2 years ago, and it got delayed for various reasons. Regardless, The Covenant is a war film. It's post 9/11 Afghanistan, but it follows fictional characters. That being said, I think it does hold some really sort of relevant themes. So Jake Gyllenhaal plays Sergeant John Kinley, who is placed in post 9/11 Afghanistan, and he recruits a new interpreter after his previous one was killed in action, and this character is Ahmed, played by Dar Salim. He's willing to work with the US Army because the Taliban killed his son and because he's guaranteed a visa when he's done. And these two don't get along at all in the first sort of act of the film, and it's more so on Kinley's side of things. He clearly is completely distrustful of Ahmed. He questions his judgment at every turn. So there's a lot of tension in the group. Eventually, his platoon comes across a group of Taliban that are able to overtake them. Kinley gets injured, and despite his poor treatment by John Kinley, Ahmed decides to save his life, and there's this really grueling sequence where he drags him miles across the open landscape. This is truly one of those great sequences in film where it's you feel the determination and sort of the human will to live, but also to be altruistic. It was just something really satisfying to see, and I did not expect something like that from a Guy Ritchie film. After all this, granted, I don't want to say too much about it, but it was in the trailer, but it does go kind of deep into the film before we get to this point. But eventually, Kinley survives. He returns to the US only to discover that Ahmed was never given that visa that he was guaranteed for allying with the US Army, and he's now living in hiding because, of course, he's really high on the Taliban's hit list. Jake Gyllenhaal and Dar Salim really do a lot of the heavy lifting here. These two actors are so good in this film. They are incredibly captivating, and the sort of bond that they form, or at least the relationship that it initially is, seems superficial, and over the course of the film it becomes something really rich and powerful, and I'm glad that it was able to nail that, because in the trailers that's sort of what they marketed the film as, a very sort of story that's centered around these two characters and their relationship, and thankfully it delivers on making that something that's really compelling. I just really didn't know that Guy Ritchie had this kind of thing in him, because again, this is a director that's known for more comedic sort of action slapstick films with a lot less seriousness, and this film is incredibly mature for something that he would normally make. The action sequences and gunfights are used sparingly, but when they are used, they're incredibly tense. I think I already said this, but the tension as a whole in this film is just constantly amped up because these people are in a constant state of danger. You never know when they might be recognized or just gunned down for no reason. Again, the story structure is very simple beyond what I sort of explained in the synopsis section of this video. It's just, it all comes down to these two actors giving it their all with these characters that I really grew to love and want to see more of, and you want them to make it, and that's what makes it such an enthralling watch. I also forgot to mention the soundtrack in this thing is phenomenal. I'm about to pull this up on Apple Music and listen to it right now. Very effective in some of the more emotional sequences. There are a couple of flaws that I could come up with, one of which is the movie could probably be a good 15-20 minutes shorter. There are a couple sequences where it sort of montages through things. Again, going back to the scene where Ahmed is dragging Jake Gyllenhaal's character just across the landscape, up and down rivers and mountains and valleys, and it's so intense. But the film has a couple sequences like that where it sort of goes beyond what it needs to do. Yes, we need to see the struggle that these human beings went through to survive this, but you don't need to play it out for 20 minutes of just no dialogue, just two human beings walking along these landscapes. It sort of becomes a little bit self-indulgent. I also feel that the closing minutes of this film could have been a bit more than they were. I could have used a little bit more dialogue to sort of wrap up things with the characters. Instead, it kind of goes for a very silent thing that sort of relies on facial expressions and stuff to sort of convey what the characters are feeling in the closing moments without getting into spoilers. I just wish that they would have given it a little bit more. Maybe they could have trimmed some stuff out in the middle and instead given us a more extended ending. I don't know. That's just how I feel about it. Overall, guys, this movie really exceeded my expectations. I didn't hear a lot of super positive buzz about it, so I went into it a little bit apprehensive. Was really surprised again by the performances and by the character work. It's a war film, but again, it smartly chooses to be more about the characters and sort of themes going on within these characters than the conflict itself. This movie doesn't really have a political angle. It's not preachy or anything, although I'm sure there will be people out there that will try their damn hardest to find something like that in here. It's really just a super hyper intense movie that sort of shows the unlikely bonding of these two souls. After all, the word covenant means bond or a camaraderie. These themes of sort of, mutual respect and honoring one's word, there's something very poetic about the way it plays out in here. And again, it's often conveyed with less words and more so with actions and just sort of showing this grueling set of events that sort of kicks things into motion. This won't be everybody's thing for sure because, again, it's very focused on these few characters. A lot of the background noise is just background noise. It's not really focused on too much. But for me, I really enjoyed this. I was surprised by how compelled I was. I was not checking my time at all. I usually do that even when a movie is somewhat engaging. So that tells me that I was having a lot of fun watching this. So I'm going to give The Covenant a 4 out of 5. It's probably closer to a 3.5 because of the pacing issues in the middle there where they sort of show some montages that don't need to be there and maybe a few little structural issues that I think could have been fixed in editing. But for the most part, I think this is a great film. It's probably the best that I've seen from Guy Ritchie in a while. Not that I've ever really disliked any of his films, but he's definitely made some that are just below what I would expect from a director of his caliber. And there you have it. Those are my thoughts on Guy Ritchie's The Covenant. As always, guys, I want to hear what you think of the movie down in the comments. And I guess, what's your favorite war film of the last couple of years? Mine, personally, is probably All Quiet on the Western Front. That was fantastic. As always, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.